You have your minute to begin, and whenever you are ready, we are so ready for you. Let us. Yeah, I think they know to wait until whatever. Let's give him one more clap.
Imagine you have a broken leg. Actually, imagine you have this broken leg. Fractured above the epiphysis of the knee, or the femur, probably severing some nerves and probably excruciatingly painful. Now imagine walking on this. Awful. Now imagine somebody tells you that you have to run a 26.2-mile marathon, all the way from the Dodger Stadium to Santa Monica Pier. Difficult alone, but with a broken leg, it seems impossible. Now, there's another catch. The people who designed this race and the board of this race say that you aren't allowed to have crutches while you run this race, no matter if you have a broken leg or not. Now, why would you not be allowed to have crutches? You have a broken leg. Well, no one else has crutches, so you don't deserve them, even though you need them. This is what it's like to have a learning disability in our education system. My name is Sam Hyatt, and I have had dyslexia I've had dyslexia for my whole life. And I was diagnosed when I was 12, which is pretty late to be diagnosed, and I've been struggling to get accommodations ever since then. For the past month, I've been going deeper into research in this topic of the limits in getting access to accommodations, specifically in college. Today, I would like to inform you all of the three major ways that limitations are imposed on students and that prevent them from getting accommodations. The first being oneself, the second being one's school, and the third being the financial limitations. To start, personal limitations and the effect they have on having students not get accommodations. One of the main personal limitations that students face is the fear of disclosure. Many students with learning disabilities have previous self-consciousness issues about their intelligence, because many of them are diagnosed late, like me. They see students around them succeeding with half the work, and they want to do as well as them, but they can't. They take this out on themselves without a disability to blame, as do their parents. Without a disability, they blame it on the student for having a C in a class instead of an A. And even if the student does know that they have a disability, their previous years of self-consciousness make it so that they don't want to tell the school that they have a disability. The National Center for Learning Disabilities created an article titled Life with Learning Disabilities, Navigating the Transition to College, published in 2018, and it provided a very interesting statistic, and I quote, "Less than 1 in 20 students with disabilities disclose their specific learning disability in post-secondary school." That means college. In college, kids with learning disabilities don't tell the school they have them, not allowing them to have accommodations. That would mean one of us would tell that we have a learning disability. This quote is direct evidence of what I've previously stated about the way students impact themselves with their fear of disclosure. Now on to personal struggles. I've now completed personal struggles, and I'll move on to the struggles that schools set on kids, preventing them from getting accommodations in school. It's important to note that all schools or universities, by law, are required to give some sort of accommodations to students with documented learning disabilities. but many schools make it hard to find information Many schools make it hard for students to find the information on the disability support program at that school.
Mm-hmm.
They spread it out over many different departments and websites, making students have to search for each piece, making them piece it together and develop their own opinion of this school instead of the school directly telling them what is happening. Also, many universities require more than just a 504 or an IEP plan. Both of these are government documents that show schools that these students have a learning disability. The extra documentation required is called re-diagnosis. Re-diagnosis can be an expensive process. Re-diagnosis is only offered by certified professionals like re-diagnosis by psychologists. They're often found in places that's my next. I'm sorry.
Let's go back to it then. So how would you say that? So not Amanda, but class, let me take a step back.
Let me take a step back for a second.
Okay, go.
And go back to the universities and the 504 plan. As I've discussed, that's how people know that you have a learning disability. And these schools require re-diagnosis. Re-diagnosis is a silly topic. As someone like Sally Shaywitz, an author of multiple books on dyslexia and learning disabilities, has said before. Re-diagnosis assumes that you grow out of a learning disability. This has been proven to not be true. A student who's 21 and was diagnosed when they were 9 will still have that disability. They just might be better at accommodating themselves with it and approaching it. This briskly moves me into my next topic of money management and the financial limitations that are created by needing to get re-diagnosis.
Mm-hmm.
Because documentation must come from a qualified professional, it can be difficult to supply the money needed for it. The Learning Disability Association of America, or the LDA, has a website titled Adult Learning Disabilities Assessment Process, published in 2013, and it explains how to get proper learning disabilities documentation. It mainly harps on the need for a qualified professional. The main qualified professional is a psychologist, and they're mainly found at health centers and in private clinics. The LDA said, and I quote, the cost of the assessment typically ranges between $500 and $25,000. This cost can leave poor kids undiagnosed, making it extremely hard for them to get a diagnosis, especially college students who already have extreme student loans. While insurance does cover some of it, and some insurances don't actually cover any of it, it can be hard to cover this cost. A more personal example by Donna Baker, who posted in the comments of an article I previously referenced, the College Admissions and Learning Disabilities article. She wrote in the comments of her struggle. She was 3 classes away from her bachelor's, and one of them was math. She had dyscalculia, and this meant that she was incredibly bad at math, and it was almost impossible for her to complete this class without failing it. She had tried it multiple times before, and she couldn't get through it. She had a 504 plan, but the school didn't accept that alone. She needed a re-diagnosis. But she didn't have $1,000, which was the cost of her re-diagnosis. The only solution that the comment section came up with was taking out a loan for $1,000, adding to her previous intense college debt. Imagine the struggle of having one class to complete your bachelor's after completing 4 years of work and not being able to complete it because of your learning disability. Terrible. In conclusion, I hope you all have learned a little bit more about the personal learning disabilities and how personal limitations, school limitation, and financial limitations limit people from getting access to appropriate accommodations. Just remember that every broken leg runner should have access to crutches if they want to complete the race, just as every learning disabled student should have access to accommodations. Thank you.